Chief, want me to start?
Sure, go right ahead.
Throw some handouts to you as you walk in.
There you go.
Can everybody hear me okay? So I have to hold the microphone?
No, we want to hold
First, I want to thank everybody for coming out today just to kind of learn about what we're asking for and why we're asking for it. So I appreciate you coming out and getting the information. First thing I'm going to do is just kind of go through the ballot language and the handout that provided there for you. That ballot language is what I took verbatim, word for word off the ballot. That's what you're going to read. If you've got your absentee ballot already, you've already seen it. Otherwise, when you go to the polls on the 4th, that's what you're going to see. That's the language right there. Shall the entire unincorporated portion of Bridgeport Charter Township, Saginaw County, Michigan, be created into a special assessment district under 1951 PA 33 as amended in order to raise money by special assessment for defraying costs of police protection equipment and buildings, and for the operation of the same, and shall Bridgeport Charter Township be permitted to raise money by special assessment for police purposes in a total annual amount of $158,444.98, not to exceed $37.80 per tax parcel with one or more structures and no assessment per vacant tax parcel for a period of 5 years. So we'll start right with that. Does anybody have any questions as far as what that's saying or what it means?
How do they consider Bridgeport unincorporated? Why is that set like that?
I have no idea.
Well,
Well, that's the kind of language that shows the law, so we get that.
I don't know why that says that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good question.
yeah. I know one question that has come up about that is the DDA. The DDA does not collect or capture any money from an assessment. So none of this goes to the DDA. And then just on that note, just so everybody's aware, the DDA has contributed, I believe it's for the last 7 years. I know they do it this year, last several years. $50,000 a year is what they provide to the township to help fund one position for a police officer. So none of that money goes to the DDA. I heard that rumor before. That's not true. The DDA is not capturing any of that money at all.
Good to know that.
What will the money raised from this assessment be used for? It's the intention of the Bridgeport Charter Township to use this money to bring back 2 full-time police officer positions. The money will also fund the purchase of uniforms and gear for 2 full-time police officers. Our current staffing level right now includes myself, 1 police chief, 1 sergeant uniformed investigator, that's Sergeant Jeff Roberts, and then we have 6 patrol officers. Prior to the layoffs of 2010, our staffing level was 1 police chief, 1 patrol sergeant, 1 detective sergeant, 6 full-time patrol officers, and 2 part-time patrol officers. And the part-time patrol officers we had at that time, they would actually be considered full-time officers now under the new standards with Obamacare and whatnot, but they were working 32 hours a week. So we equate 2 part-time officers to 1 full-time officer. That's where we get that we're requesting the 2 officers just to bring us back to where we were prior to the layoffs that we had back then. Why it's important for us to raise this money? At our current lower staffing level, there are occasionally times when no Bridgeport Township police officer is on duty due to officers being off for training, vacation, or illness. The addition of the 2 officers would enable us to achieve and maintain the 24/7 coverage. Our call volumes continue to increase. In 2011, our officers responded to 7,240 calls. In 2012, our officers responded to 6,807 calls. The decrease there is because of the lower number of officers. We weren't on as much, so all the calls had to be picked up by the state police or the county sheriff's department, making the wait times longer. In 2013, our officers responded to 8,159 calls, and this year we're currently on pace to respond to approximately 8,800 calls. So the number of calls just keep going up. The increase in the number of calls forces our police officers to continue to be reactive, and it makes it more difficult to be proactive in trying to prevent crime to make our community safer. By bringing back these 2 full-time positions, the police department's intention would be to reinstate the popular community policing programs such as Neighborhood Watch and the Bicycle Patrol. This would also allow us to focus more on criminal investigations and evidence processing to assist in better crime investigation and successful prosecution. This is just the handout that we're kind of going with, that we're trying to get the basic information out there. Some other key points that I want to bring up is, yes, we're talking Bridgeport, but just so you know that we're not asking for anything extravagant. I've got the stats from the FBI, the Uniform Crime Report. The latest stat numbers I had are from 2012, and you can go to their website. You look under Michigan Table 78. It'll give you the number of police officers for every community in the state of Michigan. Comparing populations between 10,000 and 11,000 in 2012 and right now, actually in 2012 we're at 7. We're now currently at 8 officers. The average number of officers for that population range is 18. We're only asking to get back to where we were before at 10. We're not even asking to get up to the average. Some of the other things that we've been doing in the last several years is we're trying to recoup some of our costs, so it's not all on the taxpayers. In 2011, we were able to recoup $49,335 in costs. In 2012, we recouped $96,818 in costs. And then last year, in 2013, we were able to recoup $109,636. Those costs are recouped from like impound fees, report fees, fines, traffic citations, things like that. We've just been trying to do things so that the people who are using our services the most, those are the ones that are helping to sustain us, so it's not all falling on the burden of the taxpayers. We've increased our impound fees, and we've also adjusted our report costs too. We've changed it up so Bridgeport residents actually pay a lower amount. You pay $5 for a report. Non-Bridgeport residents, somebody who's outside the community, they'll end up paying $15 for a report. So we're trying to make it more fair again for the taxpayers. One other program that we've gotten involved in is the 1033 program. Heard a lot of this in the media. The media's kind of bashing it, making it sound kind of bad, the militarization of the police. But what the 1033 program is, it allows us to get equipment from the Department of Defense for free. Now, this equipment is not all guns and vehicles. We get all kinds of stuff. And I want to thank Sam, even though I know he's being bashful, for helping us out, because he helped us out with the electrical on our air compressor, and also we got some treadmills for our exercise room, which I'm trying to use more, because Lord knows I could be on the treadmill a little more. So, but some of the equipment that we've gotten from them, tool chest with tools, treadmills, air compressor. We do have a Humvee. This week we just picked up an additional Humvee. Now the reason we got a Humvee was departments around us, Bertrand, Buena Vista, City of Saginaw, Sheriff's Department, they have them. Last winter when it got real bad, they were the only ones that were out moving around. We actually had to use a DPW four-wheel drive pickup truck and a Parks and Rec four-wheel drive pickup truck. So our purpose of getting a Humvee was for the four-wheel drive portion of it, and it's free. It's not armored. There's not guns on it, anything like that. We're in the process. I'm using my drug forfeiture funds to help to get it. We got to get it painted up yet and get it decaled. Just get it so we can, go out and implement weather. If we have a winter the way they're saying we're going to have this year, worse than last year, we're going to need that four-wheel drive capability to get out. So it's not going to be something that's on patrol all the time. We'll use it for inclement weather. If we need to get out into the woods, the fire department's got one, but with their heavy equipment on it, it makes it harder to get out in the areas where ours doesn't have the tank and the fire apparatus on it. It'll make ours a little bit easier to get out. And then, of course, you'll see it at parades, things like that, once we get it up and going. This week, we just picked up a second one. The reason we picked the second one up is it's free and it's parts. If we have something break on our original one, we've now got the second one here. We can part it out, so we can use whatever.
Can you get more yet?
We can get, it's based on the number of officers you have at your department. Talking with the coordinator there, he said with 8 officers, he may be able to squeeze a third one in. Technically, it's supposed to be 1 per 3 officers. He said I may be able to get a third one. Really don't anticipate getting a third one right now. We'll see as time goes. We want to have this first one good to go for the winter if we need it. Like I said, then the second one will be there to be able to use for parts. If anything breaks off the first one. Actually, on our way back, we picked this one up from Columbus, Ohio, drove it back. On the way back, the windshield wiper motor quit on it. So I was able to get another one through this program. Again, no cost, so I'll be able to swap that out. But as we have, like I said, parts that go on the one that we get up, that will be used on the road, we can just take it off this other one as needs, so we don't have to incur those costs for getting other parts for maintenance and whatnot. Other things we've gotten, computer monitors. I was able to get digital cameras. These things look like they were used once, so every one of my officers now has a digital camera that they can take out on patrol with them for evidence, photos, things like that. File cabinets, desks, rifle magazines. You know, the aluminum ones, you guys know how those get bent up, don't work, you need a new one. I was able to get, I actually got 50 of those. So I've got those for spares to use in our rifles that we have. Office tables, other office equipment, furniture, things like that. And also picked up a nice shredder yesterday too, because everything's about liability and shredding stuff that's not supposed to be out there. You know, once you're done with the report's done, you gotta shred it, take care of it and all that. So we've got all that there. So that's how we're trying to help the taxpayers out and not put all the burden on the taxpayers. That's pretty much what I've got for my presentation. Anybody have any questions at all, concerns?
This is gonna give us, one officer or two officers at night now?
What this will do, if we're able to get this 2 officers, we will have a full-time investigator. So he'll be assigned just to follow up on cases, take care of the court stuff, everything like that. So our daytime car is not stuck up at the courthouse unless he's on a court case, but he's not up there getting warrants, doing prosecutor runs, things like that. He'll still be here patrolling. It'll also give me a day car every day of the week from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It'll give me a afternoon car from noon, 12 noon to 12 midnight. It'll give me another afternoon car from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. And it'll give me a night car from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's if, again, there's no training, vacation, sick days, anything like that. So technically, you'll have 3 cars on from, it's a lot easier when I have it in front of me looking at the schedule. But
Two cars on between, say, 4 and midnight.
Between 3 and midnight, I'll have 3 cars on, 2 cars on between 6 p.m. and 3 a.m. Again, it's easier when I'm looking right at it. And I don't think I have that in here. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, you'll have at least 2 cars on, so the officers will have backup. Right now, what we're really seeing a lot of, because again, I think everybody knows, even though the post is still there, you still see it on Dixie Highway, it's not manned, it's closed. All those troops come out of Tri-City, out of the post out there in Freeland. Most of the time, that's where they're starting their shift, and they're coming down here. They may come down here. There may be 1 or 2 that are covering the areas what we call 2 and 4, which is pretty much the entire east side of Saginaw County. Saginaw County Sheriff's Department, they're located on the other side of the river over there on the west side. So our backup a lot of the time is actually the Vista Police Department. We spend a lot of time kind of helping each other right at the border there. They're helping us, we're helping them. That's where most of our calls are, is there in the northwest corner of the township. So that'll definitely decrease in wait times. On a lot of these calls that are 2-officer calls, the officers aren't gonna have to wait for backup. There'll be 2 of them working already, they'll be able to respond and handle calls. One of them may get tied up on maybe a B&E report. Now, because I have a second car working, that car continued to answer calls, while that first car can process the scene more thoroughly like we used to be able to do, you know, while they're working the breaking and entering investigation. Anything
I'm
else?
gonna stress, well, Casey asked us questions here next meeting, we haven't had before. The most it's gonna cost them is 38 months.
$37.80
That's the
a
most.
year.
It could be less, depending on the value of your house.
Yep, that's
No.
one thing.
No,
Oh, no, not that.
it's a flat fee for every, It's the same for everybody. It doesn't matter
Everybody
how,
else, okay.
every property, every business, if you have and there will not be any assessment on vacant land. There's got to be a building on it for it to get assessed. Everybody pays the same exact amount.
It's not based on the value of the home at all. And the good thing about the assessment is the value can also go down. If the economy turns back around, more residents move in, things like that, every year we can evaluate this, where this is at, and assessment can actually drop down. The millage can't. The millage is locked in for the length. This seems like, you know, we've attempted this before with millage, you know, last year with the millage and whatnot. This definitely by far seems the most fair way to get this done, to get our manpower back to what we need.
Everybody pays.
Everybody.
Everybody pays the same.
$40 a year for two police officers, sounds pretty big deal to me.
And the way it's written, it's locked in, it cannot go higher. If it
Right.
go down,
Yep.
Well,
And I'll let you explain the assessment,
Okay.
what the ballot's actually about more.
okay. So what we're voting on November 4th is not the dollar amount. What we've got in the language is just to show you that we've presented the information to the board and we've said, here's how much we need. So the board is committed to assessing no more than that. But what we're voting on is to create the special assessment district. Immediately following that, there will be a public hearing where the board will set the rate. And this is what they've said they're going to set the rate at. So people can even come then and speak in favor or against the amount, okay? So just because you vote yes doesn't mean you have to agree with the amount. You could come to the board and say, well, I think they should only get $30. The fire department should only get $20. You could still come and voice your opinion about the amount. And then every year, the board has to redo that.
Reevaluate.
Yes, and then you, the public can again come and speak. So one of the things that happened before was with the millage, first, this was not available to us. The law just changed, allowing us to do a flat rate assessment. But before, aside from some people paying a lot more than others, the millage would stay the same. So if your property value went up, the amount of money would go up. If it dropped, the amount we would receive would drop, which is a problem that you're seeing like in the city of Saginaw. Some of these places that have the millage, they're still operating on that millage, and the property values have dropped, and now their revenues have dropped. So even though they have a millage, they still have had to lay people off because the millage isn't bringing in nearly as much money. So this gets us the set amount for the set period of time. So that the board has the ability to assess up to 10% more. That's the max they could do. So if it were, in Chief's case, it's $38, the max that the board could increase that would be $3.80. That's state law.
That per year they want it to?
Yes.
Without-
No.
no one opinion?
Just 10% period.
10%?
Yeah.
Total for this was 5, this was 10.
Yes,
So for 5 years, they could go 10% total for
Yes.
$3.80?
right, without coming back to the voters for a vote.
Right.
But every year they hold a public hearing, and every year people can come in and talk about the assessment rate.
Looks like about $100 a household will take care of everything.
Yep. And that's per year.
And with the millage, it was a lot more, quite a bit higher, actually, with the millage rate.
And that's lockdown, then.
That's correct. Correct.
This goes away.
Yep, if anybody has any questions, you think of questions later or anything like that at all, on the bottom of the handout is the webpage link to the township webpage. My email address is listed right below that, and then again, right above that is the office phone number. So if you think of something down the road, go ahead and email me, and I'll get back to you just as quick as I can. Should be that nice.
Why is the fire station in such bad shape? I know somebody could ask me.
Well, it's the same as why we don't have a large reserve fund to take care of the expensive equipment. There was a time, as I'm told, that Bridgeport had a lot of money. They always had a high reserve. So when something was needed, they simply bought it. And of course, as the economy changed, the property values changed, that wasn't the case. Now, we do have a reserve fund for the fire department. that has been restored since the 2008 financial crisis of $150,000. So this board has allocated has begun allocating some money as they can to try and build that reserve. Unfortunately, the building went untouched. We've developed over the years some structural issues. The hose tower, there's a crack all the way around it. It was built to code at the time, but now it's going to be, at some point, that hose tower is going to have to come down. It's just reality. The brick needs to, the mortar work needs to be done on the brick, and it needs to be all sealed so that we can prevent moisture from getting back inside. The windows and doors need to be replaced. They're old. There's a lot of issues with them. Our apparatus floor is the original floor on the surface, and to resurface that floor is anywhere from $22,000 to $30,000, depending on what any issues underneath the surface. But it is the original floor, so it's more than 40 years old. Yeah. So it's lasted a long time, but if you come in the station, you'll see that there's more areas that are lifting and coming off. The drains that run the width of the station, they're separating from the floor. Those all need to get fixed because water's getting down in between there, and that's going to cause some foundation issues if we don't get that fixed. All of our grates that cover the drains need to be replaced. They're all original, so they've really lasted a long time. Unfortunately, the town boards, they just didn't take action on it. You'd have to ask them why. Since I took over in 2002, I've done a presentation every single year on all of our equipment, on the buildings, and other than getting the engine back in 2005, we really haven't made any other capital expenditures. So to look at the station, to completely renovate that station over the next 10 years is estimated to be about $700,000. The parking lot out back is starting to sink. Years ago, I think it was in 2000, we replaced the front one with a new concrete surface, and it's still in pretty good shape. But they never spent the money to do the back one. It's still asphalt. So the weight of the trucks now, it's finally at a point where it's starting to really sink, and we're going to have to replace it. And it needs to be replaced with concrete, not asphalt. The trucks are just too heavy.
How much difference would it be if the way it looked like you almost gonna repair the whole place? You know,
Yes.
Complete repair. What's the new building cost?
About $2 million.
$2 million for a new
Yes.
building. That's quite a bit cheaper.
Yes, it's quite a bit cheaper. Yeah.
Would it be the same size building, or are you gonna make it twice as big?
One bay larger.
One bay larger.
Yeah, it'd be one bay larger. There'd be a larger training area because right now the guys have to go back to the township hall, so it would have its own training room, which would also, if we were to go that route, would also double as a community room. So a nonprofit group such as Boy Scouts or somebody could use it. It could become we could have a senior center again. So it would have some public access to it as well. But the fire station size would be one bay larger to give us some additional storage room and so on.
Is there grants available for that too?
From time to time, but the issue with the grants is the priority for those, for buildings, is for fire stations that have firefighters in there 24/7, and we don't. So we could apply, but we wouldn't be a priority over like the city of Flint, city of Detroit, city of Saginaw. They would get a higher priority than we would. So there isn't a lot of that money. The last time they did that, they gave out only $2 million per grant, and I think they did $200 million nationwide, so they only funded like 100 projects. Grants for equipment are there. We've been very successful. We've obtained almost $1 million in grants for our fire department in the last 10 years. We've done very well, and we continue to apply. We just applied for a big air pack grant to try and replace our air packs. And that's something to keep in mind. For instance, if I were able to get a grant for looking at the equipment side, for our air packs, the air bottles that go on our air packs are regulated by the DOT, and they have a 15-year max life. So at 15 years, we have to replace them. So by 2018, we're going to have to replace all those air bottles. And today's price are about $1,100 a piece, are very expensive. And But if I were to get a grant to replace all the air packs, and we're going to write one again, as a matter of fact, this month it's supposed to be released. If we were to get that and replace all that equipment, then we wouldn't need that money. So the choice for the board would be take the money that would have gone to the air packs, put it into the reserve fund, or lower the assessment. And I know everybody says, nope, government's not going to give me anything back. But the fact of the matter is, every year, they have to hold a public hearing, and they have to listen to all of us taxpayers on what it is we want. So what I do every year is, our manager gets an equipment list, it's a big spreadsheet. Every single year I update that. So we see kind of where we think we need to replace equipment, in what year. And it goes all the way out about 25 years. And so we have a pretty good idea. But what we do is, for instance, this year, we had some money in the budget to replace some of our air pack equipment. But we were told about the grant being available coming October. So we're not going to spend that out of our budget. What we're going to do is write the grant, try and get it through the grant. So if we can do that, then that comes off the list. We've gotten JAWS, air packs, fire safety, fire prevention, the air compressor to fill the air bottles. What else have we got? Hazmat equipment. We had the diesel exhaust system that's in the station. We got that on a grant. Pardon me? Yeah, the 2 thermal imaging cameras. We've done very well. We continue. We'll write a couple grants a year usually.
Is there any military stuff you may use?
Chief can only get that for us if he can demonstrate that it's used to support police operations. So it has to be able to support law enforcement. So if he can, we've given him kind of a list of a couple things maybe if he could look for, and if he can come up with a way to say, yes, if my fire department has this, this is how it will help me, then we can get it. When we look at our equipment, yes, sir.
You said this is gonna be $37.80.
That's the police.
That's the police. If you look at the top of the bell engine, it's $45 for the fire department.
Now, you was talking about the board meets once a year and they can raise $10. Now, what is that $10 gonna be raised on?
Well, they legally, they can raise it 10%.
10%?
Yes.
Out of what figure?
For me, that would mean that they could increase it $4.50.
10% of $45.
Yes.
Over 10 years?
Without a vote, yes. Without a vote.
You only do that once.
Yes.
You can't do it every year.
As I understand the law, yes, it's once, without going back to the
Only
vote.
once? Over the 5 years?
You're out of luck. You can't do
It's
it.
10 years. Fire
They're
department.
not gonna raise it 10% the very
10%,
next year, 10% more of that.
Okay.
As I understand it, no, they cannot do that.
Yeah. It's just a one-time shot. You
Yeah.
only-
But
if you raise
again-
it, you raise it once.
Yeah, but again, it has to be done through a series of public hearings. So you have an opportunity to hear that it's going to happen and come and speak about it, whether you're in favor or you're against. So that's the other nice thing about this compared to a millage is, as voters and taxpayers, we have a say in that amount. And we can come and hear, and we can make them justify every year. So you might hear that we get a grant for all of our air pack equipment. You might say, well, how much did that save us? Well, it saved us $100,000. Well, then you don't need as much money as you said you were going to need. So as voters, you could come and say, you need to lower that assessment by $5 or $10. Now, will they do it? I don't know. Will we have the same board next year, or in 2 years, or in 6 years? I don't know. It'll depend on who's sitting there and how many people come to speak. It's like any other issue, really. 1 or 2 people show up, it's not a big influence on the board. You get 50 or 60 people, they begin to listen. The station aside, I have some information on the back about equipment, just to give you an overview. Equipment costs have really gone up. And when I took over in 2002, a set of turnout gear was about $1,000. Today, it's over $1,800.
Chief, I didn't see that page. Looks like we only had this one.
Yeah, our equipment.
Oh, there, sorry. Thank you, Doug.
I didn't see it either.
One of the things, the third bullet point says each firefighter has to have his or her own mask fitted to them. That's an OSHA regulatory requirement. one mask today is $1,000 if I had to replace one of our existing.
Okay, what do you do when a fireman quits with that mask?
We keep it.
You keep
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it can be sanitized. They just don't want to, you can't share them anymore. So they get sanitized.
Well, you
and-
said, it says it's fitted to the.
Yes,
Fire.
there's 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. You're going to wear one of them.
Then you justify straps to get it real stuck in the
Yes,
face.
and what they do is every year they go through what's called the fit test. So they get hooked up to a computer program, and they have to breeze through the mask to make sure that it's fitted properly. It measures, they have to bend over.
They don't
and
get
it-
thrown away then?
Absolutely not, no, they get reused.
Okay.
The masks we have now are about 2003,
Yes.
so they're 11 years old. And we haven't had to replace any yet. They do last a long time.
They are getting to a point, some
Yeah.
of them are
Yeah.
probably hitting a point that need replaced because of cracks, the rubber and stuff.
Dry rot is over, yeah.
They're kept in a protective bag, in a cloth bag to help
That
that.
doesn't,
Yeah, but it doesn't prevent it from, and then we have, some of our firefighters live close by and are high responders, so they go into fires more than people that live farther away because they're there sooner. So their equipment wears out a little bit faster than you guys all know Mark Schlichter, right? Mark, based on where he lived, he was rarely ever on that first truck. He was on the second or third truck. So Mark's gear, when he retired, kind of looked like new. We kind of teased him about it. Where Dave's, you know, his gear's only a few years old, and it looks old because Dave's one of our primary first responders. He goes into a lot of our fires, so his gear wears quick.
it falls down.
Yeah, he-
Roll around.
Yeah, the rubber starts to warp. So if we have to take one out, right now our equipment is older. We've got, how many air packs are you sending in? 8? Huh? 10. We're going to be spending about $4,000 or $5,000 just to repair the equipment we have today.
One
That's-
issue that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One issue that we do have under CSBA in 2003, when we bought these particular packs, it really became a federal requirement that it has electronic heads-up display in the side of our face or in front of our face that tells us our air levels. Every pack manufacturer had to design their pack with that capability as a secondary means of seeing the air. That's where we see a lot of our failures, is that electronics that goes into it. A lot of us know, you know, in a car or anything, electronics tend to be the place where you run into expensive failure. And it's not conducive just to our pack manufacturer or any of them, but that's where we see a lot more issues with electronics that we're required to have, more so than even the mechanical workings of the mask themselves.
When we bought, when I got in 1991, we had just bought all new air packs, so I went back and looked what we paid for them. And we paid about $60,000 for everything we got that year, everything. When we got our grant in 2003 and replaced everything, it was over $100,000, about $103,000. Now to replace everything, when we wrote the grant last year, when we write it this month, it'll cost about $167,000 for the same stuff. And Dave's right. What they've done is the requirements have changed. Now you have to have what's called a heads-up display. So you don't just look at your gauge to see if you have air. It actually displays a series of lights. It's unbelievable what they've done with technology. And as he alluded to, that drives up the cost and it drives up the repair costs. It is what it is. I mean, it's a requirement we have to follow. You can't buy one without it on it. So we're stuck.
How many runs do you make a month, a week?
About 1,000 a year is our response level, on average. Some years more, some years a little less, but 5-year average, about 1,000 a year.
How many firefighters do we have?
Today we're at,
20.
21.
And looking for more.
Absolutely. They get an hourly rate when they respond. Yep. And they get paid for trainings. They also donate a lot of time. So we've got guys that'll come in and do things. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I thought I turned that off. I'm like, okay, whose cell phone is on? I'm that guy.
Just to give you an extra on the runs, we've had 4 calls so far today.
We had one. Included smoke in a commercial building. Then we had a medical
With
call
a medical
on
call,
top of that.
right along with it, in a separate location. I mean, it's just, days go like that. One day you may have nothing, next day you may have.
How many times you get called in Northfield?
Probably on average a
Probably
year.
20 to 30 times a year.
Yeah.
If not.
Couple
I think
dozen
more
years.
than that.
Not
I
as
got
many
a
times
police
as Buena Vista
scanner.
goes to Bar.
Well, but sometimes we don't go.
That actually was one of the calls this morning.
Yeah, we did go
What's
to
Northfield?
Northfield.
Yeah.
At Department 19, right there behind 7.
Oh, yeah.
Freeway.
Are there paramedics on this too?
No, there are not. MMR is the only transporting agency today, and they have the paramedics. We looked at that, and at the time, there was, the board did,
Northfield as we speak.
yep, did not want to make the investment. Thanks a lot, you jinxed us. Did not want to make that investment and take that risk, and that's fine. So MMR provides the ALS or the paramedic side. We go on about 60% of our calls, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, are EMS related. We implemented a system many years ago to what's called priority dispatching to try and reduce that. If we went on all medical calls, we would run almost 2,000 calls a year. That's how many medical calls there are in Bridgeport Township.
Does all the fire departments do this?
Most do. Most of them do. Not all of them, but most of them do. In Saginaw Township, the police department has medical first responders. Frankenmuth, their police department does that part. Saginaw City stopped it. They don't do it anymore. Who else does not?
So you get a little, what do you call crash if you see an accident? And
Yeah,
I was
Thomas
45
doesn't-
minutes.
The majority do.
Fire guy come by, you want
The
a fire
majority
truck to
do.
block it?
Our goal is to only run on those higher priority calls. So we eliminated a lot of the calls where it was non-emergency. But I will tell you, somebody had this conversation with me a couple weeks ago. And we have, sometimes we see a delayed response from the ambulance. But there's a lot of times they just need the extra help. They need us there to help lift, to help move. We also will run, last year we ran 17 cardiac arrests. Next to the city of Saginaw, we're the busiest for cardiac arrests. Okay? So we run a lot of cardiac arrest calls.
We'll run a more successful survival rate too.
Yeah, in 2012, we had 4 survivors. We had 17 cardiac arrests that year too, and we had 4 people survive, meaning they left the hospital and went back to some normal level of life.
You
And
get
one of,
paid for this?
pardon me?
Insurance company, you get paid for this, the insurance company?
No, the insurance company will only pay the person that transports you.
So the township picks up the cost for all this?
Yes. About $40 a call, average. We don't get a lot of guys that come in for that. We have squads at night, so usually at night there's 1 or 2 of us. It's not like the whole department's responding. Yeah, unless it's a cardiac arrest, it's rare that we get a lot of people on a medical call.
Police department, we're one of the agencies that don't run the medical first responder program yet, because one of the requirements is that you have to maintain 24/7 status. And right now, where we're at today, if you look at the schedule on paper, we're 24/7, but again, even if you have somebody calling in sick, vacation, training, anything like that at all, unless we were to incur huge overtime costs, there's times where we're not covered, so we don't have that 24/7 status.
And then there's ongoing training requirements. There's the cost to get people licensed. It's
I see there's a lot of ambulances sitting in Bridgeport and Frankenmuth, you know, there's one on Curtis all the time, and Dixie.
that car is there to also cover Birch Run.
And Frank.
Yeah.
Did we see it go in different
Yeah,
directions?
that's kind of, Bridgeport's kind of the, if you think about a wheel, and you look at a map, we're kind of the hub. You know, they can put a, I call it a car, it's an ambulance. They put an ambulance here, and they can get to Spalding, the Tamath, the Birch Run, back into the city. They can get to Buena Vista from this center point. So they always try and keep a paramedic unit in Bridgeport, because they can get anywhere. For Birch Run, the car you see at Curtis Road, a lot of times, that's not a paramedic unit, it's just an EMT unit. And then what they'll do is they'll have the paramedic unit respond from Frankenmuth or Bridgeport to support that. That's why sometimes you'll see 2 ambulances. And one of them is not a paramedic unit.
But both departments are skilled in CPRs and stuff?
Yes, yeah. We have AEDs. One of those lives that were saved that year was a 10-year-old little girl. So if we don't respond, we won't necessarily have enough help on those calls that are critical. So yep, we still go on some calls that we don't think we need to. But those other calls kind of make it worth doing. And I don't like getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning for those calls that I get canceled and it was an accidental medical alarm or something like that. I don't like that. But there's also times at 2 o'clock in the morning when that call is really serious and we're able to help. The other thing that happens is, depending on where it occurs, if it were to happen over in this area, I respond right from my home. If it's out on the other side of the river where Dave lives now, Dave would respond direct from his house. So we don't drive the officers don't drive all the way to the station. We'll actually respond directly to that incident and begin rendering care. So we've talked about eliminating it, but we think that eliminating it is going to cause our residents more harm than good with the money we would save.
There's a large number of calls during the day when the firefighters, 3 firefighters are at the station, that we actually beat LMR to the scene.
Yes.
Increasing the response time, the time that we can at least bring oxygen and certain things to the patient, even before the ambulance arrives.
In the case of the 10-year-old girl, Dave and I got on scene, and we shocked her twice with our AED before the ambulance even got to the driveway. So he's right, during the day, we have people there. So there's always discussion about medical, what to do about that, but in the end, the benefit outweighs what we would gain if we eliminated it. We'd lose something if we eliminated it.
But in what you've written here, none of this money is going to go to pay your salary
No.
wages or anything.
No.
This is all going to strictly be used for equipment,
This is- yes.
building, et cetera, et cetera.
This is to make sure that our firefighters have everything they need to respond.
Above and beyond your budget,
Yes, yes,
that incorporates all of them and
Yes.
covers them not.
yes. We don't have a large line item for some of these items on our budget today. Our equipment budget this year was $15,000. We're trying to not touch that reserve money in case something big happens.
Did you say your budget was 15,000?
No, for the equipment. For
Oh.
our equipment budget, line item was only $15,000. It was not a huge, it's not a huge amount of money. So we try and maintain that reserve fund in case something really big happens and we need to tap that. But we did 4 years ago when we replaced the roof. We went to the reserve fund to get the roof replaced. It was just at a point it needed to be replaced, and we did do that already. I'm talking about our apparatus. Apparatus is very, very expensive. I looked up our records. One of our engines that we bought in 1987 was about $66,000. Actually, I'm sorry, it was $118,000 in 1984. I was thinking about this. So in 1984, we paid $118,000 for a basic fire truck. When we bought engine 9 in 2004, we paid $270,000 for that truck. Today, that truck would cost about $365,000. That's a basic fire truck. There really isn't anything special about that fire engine.
There again, federal rules of creating certain expenses. From the time that we bought our last engine until today, they've changed the engine emissions. They've actually eliminated much of the competition there because only a couple of the heavy engine manufacturers stayed in the game. When we bought the original engine in 2005, we could pick from like 5 or 6 different engine manufacturers. Today, it's how big of a Cummins diesel do you want? It's pretty much down to the one that they increased. They had to redesign trucks to accommodate the urea tanks and everything that goes into the scrubbing systems they have now. They instituted new rollover protection laws, new protection for seatbelt sensors, so that every firefighter has to have a seatbelt on if the truck won't move, things of that nature that they've incorporated in. It's driven the cost way up in the last decade.
We now have to meet the same emission standards as any semi on the road. Even though we operate hourly, think about how long a fire truck operates on a fire scene, but we may only drive 5 miles to get there. But we still have to meet the same emission standards. So those costs have really gone up. One of the things, I'm sorry?
You don't realize how many hours you put on that engine setting the fire running.
Yeah, they do, they've accumulated some hours, not a lot of miles, but the, but looking at their age, we're starting to see higher repair costs, and at some point we need to do something with the fleet. And what we'd like to do is actually downsize the fleet by one piece of apparatus or one fire truck. We would like to take 2 vehicles we have today and sell them, take that money, some additional funds, and buy 1 truck that's multifunction without an aerial. We'll keep 1 aerial, the other one would go away. So we would actually downsize the fleet by one fire truck, but still have everything we need, pump capacity, tank capacity, everything we need for structural firefighting. So it would actually benefit us and would save us in the community a lot of money. One of those trucks a year is $5,000 just for the insurance of it. We insure them at replacement value. It's very expensive to operate a piece of fire apparatus.
Regardless of age?
I'm sorry?
Regardless of age?
Regardless of age. What they base it on is if that truck were totaled, if somebody hit it on the highway, which happens, if one of our drivers, I don't want to say it, were to crash a fire truck, hasn't happened yet, babe, hopefully not. The insurance company says, what would it cost us to buy you a new one if that happened? So they evaluate that on an annual basis.
You got all your facts and figures, shouldn't have too much more questions.
We've been providing this information every year to the town boards that have been seated since 2002. Every single year they get an update of all of this information. So it's all current. We've had an engineer actually come in. We had John Staley come in and evaluate the building. Actually look at the soundness of the structure. The front wall, we have a gap of about 1 inch that's separating the front wall from the floor, and they can't fix that. In other words, they can't put it back, but it needs to be stopped from going any farther. The construction standards at the time is what they've said is they weren't required to connect the wall to the floor like they are today. So if you think about the station, it's built right on Dixie Highway. One, the engineer said it's built so that it's constantly under wind strain, so they almost should have turned it sideways. So where the doors are, where the least amount of support is for the building, the wind is constantly doing this to the building all day. There are times when the wind will actually pull the back door open on the station. So that's one issue. And then if you think back when Nash Finch was here and more businesses, think of all the truck traffic that went by. There's times when you can stand upstairs and a truck will go by and it'll shake the building. And you can stand on the floor in the corner and do this, and you can move the floor up and down. So those are some of the structural issues that we really need to address if we want to keep that building and have it last longer.
You got a plan in effect that how you're going to implement all of this?
Yes, we have completely evaluated. We've had mechanical people come in. We've had an electrician guy come in. I can't think of his name. Got a big beard. Probably play Santa for. Anyway, we've had our electrical system evaluated. We've even had consumers come out and look at what would need to be done. We've had mechanical people come in, plumbers come in, and do an evaluation and provide us a cost estimate. So we've done all of our homework. We had flooring people come in, people that do doors and windows. Engineering firm, Woolgas Construction came out and gave us an estimate on fixing all of the structural issues, taking down the hose tower. They wouldn't completely remove it. They would bring it down to the current roof level so we'd still be able to use it for storage and things. So they've given us cost estimates on all of it.
I mean, you can prioritize how you're going to do it.
Yes.
You can't do it all at once.
No, we can't do it all at once.
Okay,
We can't do it all at once. What we would look at, for instance, the floor is becoming a hazard. It's becoming a trip hazard. That needs to get done. And the drains need to get fixed. The brick That could get done right away because that's on the outside, it doesn't interfere with the internal operation. Our boiler system, I don't know how many of you know this, but when they built that station, they had actually planned on expanding out both sides. In 1984, they had an architect come in from Saginaw, and they designed the additions. We were supposed to have an addition on each side of that current building, and it just never happened. Of course, construction costs back when that station was built, by the way, I looked it up, they paid $45 a square foot.
Oh, geez, you build a house for
That's what they paid to build that fire station. You know, what would we pay today for commercial construction for a square foot? Quite a bit.
Today you have to deal with the floodplain.
Yeah, plus it's in the floodplain. And,
Dump too, that's where the dump is.
yeah,
Yes.
when the flood of '86 hit, they had about 3 feet of water through the station.
I'm talking fifties and sixties.
Oh, and
That was the dump.
up front part was too?
On the road going to the dump.
Okay, all right,
Dump was the island.
okay.
The dump was where the city building,
On the island, too, most of the island was all dumped.
I remember shortly after I moved here, there was a big controversy because they had to inject some concrete and stuff into the township hall because it was sinking, right? Okay. So if we were to add on to the current station, one, we would have to take away some of the historical village parking lot. I'm not in favor of that. I mean, that's a pretty awesome thing for us. I'd hate to take away any of their parking. And then if we wanted to go out the other side, we'd actually have to take the boulevard, Mill Street, and take it down to 1 lane in each way. And the township would have to actually take ownership of that. And then we'd have to move all the underground utilities. To add on to that side of the building, for the consumer's energy work and all the underground utilities, they estimated we'd spend $300,000 before they even laid the brick. Yeah, consumers came out, did a complete evaluation. The consumers said they won't go, they'd have to go underground, but they won't go underground and come back up. So they'd go all the way underground, all the way back to Township Hall.
But you guys 5 days in.
Because it cost $1 million to tear it down.
Yeah, so
Make
the,
yourself
so the
pool
estimate,
there, you got a pool, drive your trucks underneath, on the floor.
huh,
There you go. Problem simple.
Right where you can see all over the whole township from up above.
Right.
That's why they bought the ladder truck, ain't it? Because of days in.
and Nash Finch. Nash Finch, because when they did the huge addition,
Yeah, but they weren't high.
no, but they had anhydrous ammonia. And that, you need aerial, and you need lots of water to dissipate anhydrous ammonia. So that was also part of it, because of where that area was.
Aerial devices aren't just good for height, it's width, so you can reach out over top and
And that
I mean,
building, that
I can
building's at
remember
least
when they
4
talked
stories
about
tall.
buying that ladder truck, they said because of the hotel, they had it happen because of the hotel. They said it was a state law.
Well, it wasn't state law, it's the ISO rating. And the Insurance Services Office, they rate properties based on fire protection. They now also use the building code. And that's, some insurance companies use the ISO rating to establish your rates. Not everybody does it. State Farm does not use the ISO rating schedule. My insurance company does. And so it just depends on who your insurer is. About 80% of those in Michigan, I think the last time, well, that's been a few years since we evaluated it. But the primary insurers in Michigan, the ones that we see when we have a fire, the big names, about 80% of those, that was, oh gosh, it's probably been 3 years since we did that. About 80% of them back then use it, but some don't. Not all of them do. AAA does not either for residential. I understand they do on the commercial line. If you have AAA for residential insurance, I don't believe they use that. So the ISO rating system dictates what you're supposed to have. And that was part of it.
There was a big argument going on back then a little bit, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I know. I still hear about that.
They talked about that.
I was just a firefighter back then. That debate is still, I still hear about that, and that's fine. I understand. Those ladder trucks were $360,000 a piece back then. There'd be $750,000 a piece today. It's crazy the cost, what's happened with the cost. So we need to do everything we can to downsize the fleet while we still make sure we have the apparatus we need. And the big thing for us is pump capacity. We need a reserve pump. We need to have that pump back at the station, so if the two other engines are out, we've got one at the station. We have mutual aid. Now we don't need 2-ladder trucks anymore. And yes, there's a debate whether we ever needed 2-ladder trucks, but for argument's sake, let's say we did. But now Frankenmuth has a 100-foot platform. Univista now has one that operates. Their old one, most of the time, wasn't operating. They now have one. So we don't need 2 anymore. We can, if we think we have a big commercial fire, we can start calling in those guys with their areas. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. When was the last time we pumped one of our aerials on one of our fires?
Garage fire, that's
Yeah, with the stakes.
over here.
Yep. With the snakes.
Yeah, there was a big garage that burned up, they had stakes in it.
This guy had an out, he did, he had an outbuilding where he bred snakes and he sold them.
Oh, my God.
I didn't tell them until after they came out. Oh, by the way, guys, I forgot to tell you, there's a whole room of snakes in there, so watch yourself.
One
They're
was
like,
so
what?
big, we thought it was a piece of fire hose laying there. I mean, the body was huge.
Yeah. He told me that. I said, there's what in there? He said, snakes. I said, you got a couple pet snakes? He's like, no, there's like 50 in there. Okay, I'm going to stand back over here. No, yeah, you never know what you're going to find, do you? You never know. Never know. But most of the time, our aerials have been used on mutual aid. More so.
The problem is this is pathetic. The showing that we had here tonight is pathetic. And how do we go about getting this message to the people of Bridgeport? And how do we get the people of Bridgeport off of their deadbeat butts and get them into a voting booth? Because we're getting less than 10% of the whole damn township. That's pathetic. I don't care what anybody says.
Your first question, this is a pretty good group. Now,
No, this is not a pretty.
compared to what we had before. When we did the first year we tried to do the millage, I did 23 public forums, 23. And we had a total of 80 people for all 23.
Yeah.
The second time we tried to do the millage, I thought, well, let's get out of the township office. So we went out to churches, thinking people would come to their neighborhood church. We had 2 meetings at churches where the only person there was the person that unlocked the door. Literally. This is big in comparison to anything we ever had before.
Well,
So you're right.
I can give you
Now,
2 examples of that.
It's not on there, but if you go to the website, that's on, that Chief Duffett mentioned, it's on his sheet. I forgot to put it on here. Our information is out there as well. And there's information on all the apparatus. If you go to the fire department section, all of our stuff is out there so you can see and read about it. But our assessment information has all been put together in one spot for you. So if you go out to the township website, I think it should be up there pretty quick.
I didn't check today, but yeah, I think it was going on today.
Yeah, if not today, probably tomorrow. So people can go there and see it. The police department has done up some flyers. We're going to do signs. Firefighters have done a card that we're going to go door to door and hand out. We're all going door to door together, by the way, within the 2 weeks of the election. Try and get the message out to let people know we need help. The firefighters have allocated up to $1,000 out of their own pockets to support this effort. So we really are doing everything we can. And we're going to get out and knock on doors and try and get people to get to the polls and vote. Because you're right, we have a very low voter turnout.
It's terrible.
Whether the fact that it's the gubernatorial election, whether that'll help or not, I don't know.
What do you think, Jack? You think we could try to have another meeting here and get some more publicity out there? Would it help?
We
Or
brought it up last week at the meeting. We had pretty good turnout, what, 80, 90 people here?
We mentioned last month, it was in last month's newsletter.
And it was in last month's newsletter, we made sure
They've
that.
known for a month.
Well, what you gonna do, I do, is just some people are interested in this kind of stuff, other people, I guess, don't care, they're just not gonna show up no matter what you do.
But are they gonna vote?
That's a good question.
If they don't have all the answers.
They like the bitch, but they don't like to show
Yes.
up and get the answers.
What I'm saying is, I don't know. If we'd have tried to have this at a meeting, when we had 80, 90 people here,
But then how many of those people are actually residents of Bridgeport, number one? You know,
I would say the
you're-
majority.
You think? I don't know who shows up at your meetings.
I would say, wouldn't you say the majority?
We were kind of hoping to have, open to the public, which we can't do at our meeting, which we had a conflict with them. They didn't realize that we had it open to the public.
Tonight, it was open to everyone.
So, if we would've put it on the Bridgeport website, we would've got more people, maybe, because how many people here are signed up to the Bridgeport website where they send out the notices? They're great at that. They send out fire calls and police calls, and, you get messages from Bridgeport, 3-4 times a week
At least,
of what's going on in Bridgeport. How do you sign up for that? Call Bridgeport Township and they'll sign you right up. I don't know what the, website is, so just call them and
It's called,
give them your email.
it's called Constant Contact, is what it's called. You tell them you want to be signed up for Constant Contact, and all you need is an email address, that's it. They don't require anything else from you.
It sends you all the minutes, it sends you the minutes of the meetings,
What's coming
the
up?
agendas of the meetings.
For all the meetings, DDA, Planning Commission, all of that comes out, so you don't have to go and look for it, yeah. It's actually really grown, too.
Yeah.
Is anybody here, really concerned about an extra $30, $40 for the fire department and
Looking at it, like you said, it's just under $100 a year.
$100 a year?
That's worth it.
For protection?
Yeah, for what you're gonna get out of it.
The question is
Let's
how do
keep
we get it
Bridgeport
out there?
safe.
How do we know?
Problem is, we can't bring this up at the next meeting because it's the day after you vote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted
Last
to
two
know, I
meetings,
get
you
it
come
close
out,
to the meeting so that
you come
people
out,
don't forget about it.
2 months
Nobody
ago,
shows up.
and talk. The next day, guys, the rest of the meeting last week.
I'm gonna leave.
You're not here tonight.
I'm gonna leave a stack, whoever wants to grab them, if you wanna share them with your friends, your neighbors. The information's there.
That'd be something good too to print, Jack, and hand out at the next board meeting to everybody that's here.
But the board meeting is
Oh, thank you.
after
Do you have a Facebook page or anything like that? Email where you use
Yeah, you've got
We got our own website.
Okay.
We'll be looking for
Yeah.
good high traffic areas to put
If Carol
signs.
put it on there again.
I don't know how many people use that.
I don't know. We have the website.
But before even, Mark Schlickbeer, the way they would have done it before would have cost the Schlickbeers like $4,000 a year. Because all their vacant land would have been assessed. This way, Mark's only paying on the property that he has a building on. So he said, yeah, this is easy for me. But before, if you think about $4,000 a year, now multiply that by 10. Now I invest that $40,000 in equipment that I could make money off of. That's a big hit for the farming operation, and he's right. He was right. I understand how
I
he
don't
felt.
think it's the farmers that's gonna turn you down.
Yeah, not
There
now.
ain't that many farmers in Bridgeport.
Before it was an issue because they were the
Yeah,
largest
but there
landowner.
still ain't that many.
Even the ones that are, they want the protection, so they're not gonna turn it down anyhow.
Part of the issue too, I had spent a lot of time talking to people after the last merger, and one of the issues, we had the bridge controversy. And the DDA was embroiled in the bridge controversy, and the DDA's name was on the assessment language, or the millage language. I'm not giving the DDA any money, even though the DDA had passed a resolution or voted to not take any of the money. Even though they're a taxing authority, they said we won't take any of that money. But people were angry, they said, I'm not giving the DDA any money. So the DDA gets absolutely none of this money, because it's assessment, not a millage. So that was an issue before. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I talked to 4 different people today, and they said this started at 7, no wonder your crowd is down. I don't know where they got that, and I thought it was 7, that's the reason I just called.
Okay.
Maybe we can have a relapse real quick here.
If any more show up, yeah.
And the DDA, you're right, always does vote to turn down money, and the DDA does police officer.
$50,000 a
We
year.
did also help the fire department get a grant this year.
They allocated over 4 years, almost $30,000 for us to upgrade our software and some technology things we needed. So over the 4-year period, we'll get $26,000, I think. So, there are areas that they can and will help in.
But the thing of it is, until right now, I didn't know that. Who in Bridgeport knows that stuff?
And the DDA could not have the money to pay for that extra police officer. It's $50,000 a year.
Go buy all the flowers.
I've heard that more than once.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, we'll turn this over to the DDA member that's here.
You're absolutely right about the disconnect in the community, because we run into that ourselves. People that think that we have a full-time, 24/7 fire department and have for years, and that's never been the case. We have Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, 3 guys. And that's our time of day when we don't have many on-call people available. Many of these guys have daytime jobs that we're not available, so you may just get 3 firefighters if you get an emergency in the middle of a weekday afternoon.
We had a call this morning at Severance Tool. Fire alarms, odor of smoke in the building, and the first truck went with 2 guys, the second one went with Dave and I. That's what we had. So if that turned to be something else, we would have had, and we had 1 more guy show up, so we would have had mutual aid come in.
And we have to keep in mind that the mutual aid response could possibly be the same.
Yes.
So you might only get 4 more guys for 2 other departments.
Spalding helped us out on a fire last weekend. They're getting into their harvest time. Spalding has very few fighters available quickly this time of year, because the vast majority of their department are far.
Frankenmuth has a minimum of 20 on every run.
Oh, we call Frankenmuth pretty quick most, because Frankenmuth can get you during the day.
That's what I'm talking about, I read it in the paper.
Yeah, they really do have they're fortunate too, because they have a lot of their, how many of your people, you're still on
Live within a
Frankenmuth, aren't
mile.
you? You're on Frankenmuth?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I thought for some reason, you look familiar, I thought maybe you were on Frankenmuth's fire.
Everybody knows her.
Yeah, everybody's, yes.
Yeah, but for some reason I thought that you were.
He's probably cooked there.
But Frankenmuth, they have so many of their guys, they have several that work in the township, water department.
Oh, yeah.
And then they have,
Places,
they have Frankenmuth Mutual,
Mike Young.
Young's. So they can get firefighters that can leave their jobs that are very close to them.
We simply don't have that many firefighters working at Bridgeport.
Yeah.
When we got on, there was quite a few firefighters, even worked for the township, let alone local businesses. Now there's only a couple that actually work for a local business, and they typically can't even leave that business.
Yeah.
Just because, for that business to operate, they can't let people just freely leave like they used to 20 years ago. We've taken a lot of hits. The GM available workers that used to be here 20 years ago are no longer available to us like they once were.
People don't want to make the time commitment. It's time, it's a commitment.
I realize that, but
And the training, it's 6 hours a month, maybe a little extra if you're doing something special, but it's not a huge amount of training. But you got to get there and train. You got to know what you're doing. So it is a time commitment. And you got to come to the calls. If you're not going to come to the calls, what are you doing on the department? We had a gentleman about 2 years ago now. He lives down on Margaret, down over by the police post, that road that goes in between the police post and Bridgeport Village Square. And he came to the station, was pounding on the door apparently, because he called 911, but we weren't coming. And he thought, I wonder where they're at. I wonder if they're still sleeping. He thought he'd lived in our township for over a decade. He thought we had people at the fire station. He had no idea that at night we're basically volunteers. He had no clue. So he drove to the station and was pounding on the door trying to wake us up, and of course we weren't there. Yeah, he had no idea that we didn't have full-time people. Now, we have a website, we have a Facebook page, we have all public events. You come to a public event, typically you'll see different information available. You're right, how do you get people to read it? And then with everything coming at them, how do they remember it all?
That's beginning dinner tomorrow night.
Yeah, spaghetti dinner tomorrow night. We'll have displays up. We'll have some equipment out, and
Now, where was that advertised at?
well, there were flyers that were sent out, Facebook.
Flyers where? I never got one.
I don't know where
They don't mail them out.
they put them in the businesses. The guys will take them out, and put them in the businesses. I don't know which businesses they went in.
They should sign up for
Oh, it's gonna be expired.
Where does that money go to
$6 for.
that you
Good
raised?
question. So, years ago, we had the firefighter association, and they have dues that comes out of their checks, that goes into their firefighter association. And way back when I got on, it was like, I don't know, $5 a month. And it was primarily used to pay for our annual dinner, maybe a summer picnic. It was used if somebody got married or somebody's immediate family member passed away, to send flowers or to make a donation. And that's what we had. And then we'd have a pancake breakfast, and that money would go into there as well to be used for, we'd buy equipment with it, maybe an air compressor for the station. Well, what happened was we decided that it was best to separate that money. Because some people said, I don't mind donating, but I'm not buying them a new TV. So we formed what's called an auxiliary. They're their own nonprofit group. And it's fire department auxiliary. It's members of the fire department can belong. It's their family members. It's people, anybody. You could belong to the fire department auxiliary if you wanted to. And so they now do all the fundraising. So for the Firefighters Association, the only money that goes into their account is the money that comes out of their paychecks. $20 a month is what they pay now. And all of the other money goes into the auxiliary. And what they do is they earmark it. They now they buy all of our fire prevention materials for the kids when we go into the schools. We used to spend about $1,000 a year out of our budget for that. They now buy all that. We don't spend any money on that out of our budget. They will sometimes buy a piece of equipment for us. Money for to keep the fire safety house running. We don't spend any money out of the general fund for the fire safety house other than the insurance. Everything else, all the upkeep comes out of that fund. So we're not paying for any of that. We pay for the gas to haul it out of our budget. What else have they done?
They purchased, prior to our getting a grant a couple of years ago for smoke detectors, they would buy so many smoke detectors to give away.
$250 to send a kid, they donate $500 to send 2 kids to camp. So again, they bought some
Can we
equipment.
just give you money for this auxiliary, or do?
Yes, people have made donations. If you make a donation to the fire department, that's where it goes. It does not go to the township, to the general fund. It goes into the auxiliary. And I've been asked that, if I make a donation of $100, is it going back there? No, it goes into that auxiliary fund to be used for those projects, for
I
those
don't like
special.
spaghettis.
You know, I do, I'll eat your portion of it. And it's a great group. They buy all the stuff that Santa hands out every year. They do all of that. They buy popcorn, we make that for the kids.
You helped get the Bridgeport Police Fire Explorer started.
Yeah.
Contributed to that.
Yeah, this year, we've always, from time to time, when we have enough kids who want to participate, have a Fire Explorers program. We have since the mid-90s. And this year, the police decided to try and do something joint, and so they actually have a police one running now. And so we had a fund set up for explorers, to pay dues and things. So they just tagged on to that, and so some of the money will go to make sure that we can get the kids involved in that as well.
Sarah, we bought the uniforms for?
Yep.
Yep.
You guys
Yes, it is.
contributed to that, we're very thankful for that. I know Officer Frank Green's now recruiting at the school, and having the school, you're trying to get some more kids involved in that again.
You better get them quick, because there ain't gonna be a school much longer.
Oh, boy.
We're not going there today.
Wow. That subject literally is making me lose so much sleep. It's terrible. Anyway, let's not go there. We'll be here for a while if we get on that one.
No, I'm not getting on it.
Good, thank you.
Bob, do you have any questions? You come in late?
I gave it.
You're just gonna vote to spend $100 next year and that'll work.
They broke it all down to where all the money's going, and why it's going. Yeah.
Because none of that information is guesswork. It's been updated year after year after year after year. So we have the cost pretty close. Now, obviously, if we go to redo the floor, we would send that out for formal bid. So we might save a little money if we could get some competition. But we didn't want contractors spending a lot of time on this stuff because then you're just kind of kicking tires and you're wasting their time. So we tried to get somebody to come in. Sam was very gracious. He's been in a couple times, actually. We better give him the bid when he bids. But he has. He's always been willing to come in and evaluate the lighting. He worked with us with his supplier and consumers to see what kind of rebates there were. So we've had some people that have been very generous with their time to make sure that our information is accurate. Heating and plumbing, American Heating and Plumbing has been great. They came in and evaluated the old boiler system, which, by the way, is so big, it was sized for the addition that never got done. So it's just ridiculous how much money it costs to run that thing in the winter.
It's killing you.
Oh, it's terrible. If it's really cold, like last year, there were months it was $1,200. And all that does is provide heat, no other hot water. I mean, that's bad.
You got the doors open.
Not in the winter.
No. You gotta get the fire trucks on.
Well, that's true.
And you're right, all the heat goes out the door, and the doors go down, and it starts all over again. We do have them on a switch, on a timer, so when we go out, they don't stay open any longer than 3 minutes. So we did install those when we did openers, to kind of make sure one doesn't get left open. Because before that, every once in a while, the truck would roll out, and they'd hit the button on the remote, and the door wouldn't close. Well, they're not going to stop.
No.
Just keep going and hope somebody else comes in to close the door. A couple times you come back a half hour later, you're like, oh my gosh.
All those cold
The building side, we would eliminate that boiler. They'd put in a much smaller one, and then we would go to traditional heat and air conditioning for everything else. So it'd be high efficiency. That would replace the old doors, put all new seals in, all that stuff to make it as energy efficient as possible.
Why don't you consider doing fundraisers
We do, but
to help raise some of this money, your $1,000 for your mask or something?
well, the spaghetti dinner, to give you the spaghetti dinner at the most. The spaghetti dinner, the pancake breakfast this year raised how much? $1,000.
So that bought a mask?
No, that went to other things because
Well, I mean, it would have.
it would. The spaghetti dinner, depending on how many people come in, community church is having their harvest dinner as well, so we have some competition this year. But we've made upwards of $1,000 for that. So you can make some money, and we do. We apply that to things that we otherwise would pay for out of our budget. Okay? The auxiliary has bought one of our defibrillators. It's a couple $1,000. So that's money that would have been spent out of the general fund. So the money that the auxiliary spends today is money that we would normally have budgeted. Like we used to budget $1,000 every year for all of the fire prevention activities. We haven't budgeted that in 7 or 8 years. That they pay for all that stuff. So the money they raise does offset our current budget.
Right now, the main project that we have undergoing for the auxiliary, the bulk of the auxiliary's money is our safety trailer. Our safety trailer is 10 years old. It's been to all of our schools and multiple events every year, and many of our neighboring departments will also borrow it. And by the way, they will also donate money to the FD as well. But right now, it needs upwards of $6,000 to $7,000 worth of work, both in redoing the frame and replacing some of the emblems on the side so that it looks a little sharper than it does right now. And so that's a lot of spaghetti dinners and pancake breakfasts. And we're not even donating all the money that comes in for those because we got so many other things. The coloring books still need to be bought. The other things need to be bought. So unfortunately, as those things come about, It's less masks that they could buy or tools they could buy. And the other thing we run into is having 3, 4 special events through the year that the guys participate in, on top of going to 3, 4, 5 calls a day, burned out on going to events after a certain point. So we can only do so many fundraisers, quite honestly, and not burn the guys out on top of all the stuff they do just to get up in the middle of the night and go to a call, or a weekend with a birthday or all that stuff. So really their plate is full for the whole year with everything they do. So there's only so much fundraising, quite honestly, that we have been able to do successfully to this point, at least at that rate.
What did you guys just do for, Falling Fire Department, how things set that up? How did they turn out? How much did you think they made on that? One day.
That's the
One
community,
day.
Jack, that's not the part, that's the community.
But that fire department put it on.
But that's Spalding Township residents standing behind, and that's what I told Ted over there. That's Spalding Township residents taking care of Spalding Township. If you look through that, I mean, these guys came to breakfast, but 99% of them people were Spalding residents that supported their fire department. Where's our residents?
On this particular year, they did do much better than they typically have. Changed some many things in which,
Sam Roberta, right?
yeah, they helped.
I didn't have nothing to do with
They
it.
had a record turnout for their pancake breakfast this
Right,
year
right.
versus even every previous year.
But they told them how to run it. Like, Sam Roberta took care of the breakfast out here for the Boy Scouts for years. And they had good turnout.
We've always had, it's been a roller coaster for our
But
events.
maybe you should look at that, maybe have one out here, you guys, you know?
Okay?
You could see a lot of people out here.
But you gotta get the word out.
And you could probably get gun club members to be there to help too.
It's not during fish festival.
Not during the fish
Not during
festival.
first.
But, you know, it's just another way to help the community.
It's sometimes nice to have it at the station because people get to see the station and see our equipment and
So we don't have to give
our,
them places.
you know, stuff we have.
But you're not set up to cook a lot.
Yeah, we have 3
the
big
equipment
grills.
out on the
Yeah.
apparatus floor and
Yeah.
our gear is set up in a way that we
Spalding
can get at it.
and their next
So we
breakfast is
just-
gonna borrow their dribbles.
We take all.
We bought
That was the
our
first
equipment
comment.
people
When the
need
Lions
and they
Club
run it.
dissolved before it started again, we bought all that equipment from them.
Okay.
The trailer, we bought the trailer and the griddles. We have 3 big griddles.
That was actually our 30-inch breakfast. Yeah, I looked.
Oh, my God. Started off only one a year. Got up to 3 a year.
We're trying to make Bridgeport grow, but we need a lot of help, you know?
People are upset, they're great when they have questions, the station is open during the daytime, you can come and ask questions, right?
Come look in the building, look at the trucks, ask questions, look at the equipment, absolutely.
I mean, there's multiple ways to get the information that you want, the station's not locked up there today, so, you know, people say they want.
Somebody has a question about what's going on with the building, come on by and I'll take you through it.
Could you get TV5 there? You know, just say, hey, you guys help with a little,
Yeah,
show
so,
and tell, this is what we want our money for, put it on the news, like the people that sit home and don't do nothing.
I've sent several emails out to all the media, TV5, 25, 12, Herald, I'm live.
They haven't
Herald
responded.
is gonna be putting something out. That's the only response I've got.
Sometimes with the media though, if you don't have some major crisis, they don't wanna spend a whole lot of time on it. If you can't see, like, the engines are blowing on half of our trucks and we can't fix them, they don't want it.
Channel 12's always been really good for us. About every year, they come out and do a brief story on recruitment and the need for on-call firefighters. And 5 is not as responsive, but 12 is usually really good with us. So I'm certain we can.
I've talked with Terry Camp
Yeah, we should be able to
twice
get-
now about this. I'm waiting, I'm hoping something.
You know, every community now is trying to get money for police and fire. I mean, if they did it for Bridgeport, then they're thinking, well, then we're gonna do it for Buda Vista and Frankie Motion. Everybody else is next thing. We don't have news, we're just promoting all
Well, we could use a little help on that railroad crossing there after the Cass River Bridge there on Fork Road, you know. I've been trying to get Channel 5 out there, and they ain't appearing.
That came up at the meeting Tuesday night. And the railroad says,
They're out, they're broke.
yeah, it's not in
Yeah.
this budget.
Yeah,
So,
well, you know what? My front end's broke too, but I mean, you know,
so we have to stay on it, but you're right, maybe the media would help with that. And,
We're gonna contact the media about the Dixie Highway. Look how bad it is.
oh, yeah, it's
The
terrible.
main highway in Michigan for years. And they just resurfacing M83 all the way to M50.
When we had all that,
There wasn't nothing wrong with it. They ground it all up, put a whole new road in it.
when we had all that rain, we made the call, when it was flooding, what they said, I give it time, it'll go down.
You're right, it is bad.
Our politicians are up for election, now's the time we're telling.
Well,
What
when
do
we-
you do about the Dixie? The state don't own that no more, you know that?
No,
The state gave it to the county, they don't want nothing to do with Dixie Highway.
probably because it needs to be replaced.
It's not a Class A road no more.
Really? Didn't know
The
that.
county hasn't got any money to fix it, so there you are.
We talked to the county of it, yeah, and it says the state won't give us a penny no more for the Dixie.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
Bridges, yes, but the Dixie itself, they just own it. Maybe we gotta get more people involved in that, you know?
More people need to speak up, you're absolutely right. Well, the other night on the Fort Road, only one person came to speak about it. And Rose had already made the call, and she's gonna make the call again, but only one person came to complain about that, to say, is there anything we can do? That's it. Out of everybody that drives over that, only one person is
I
supposed
ain't
to.
been down that road in a while, is it bad?
Yeah.
The crossing is getting bad. The roads are.
I mean, it's not bad, it's terrible. And I can't get, you know, I've called the county, I've talked to the township, they don't, you know, at least she's called and tried to get somebody out there. I've called TV5, trying to get them out there. And it's just like these gentlemen saying here, if it's not high profile, they don't want nothing to do with it, because that 15, 20 seconds that they're gonna put that on television, they want it to be spectacular, and a railroad crossing ain't spectacular.
Yeah,
But when
until somebody crashes and is killed in a car crash or
Well,
something, and
when-
then it becomes news, unfortunately.
when you're knocking out your front ends, and $1,000 ain't doo-doo on a car today,
And it delays our response.
you know, well, yeah, but the thing of it is, between the police department that's running their friggin' vehicles over that, and you gentlemen that's running your vehicles over that, if we kinda coordinate it with everybody in the friggin' township, we gotta put forth an effort. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, you know what I'm saying? And it's that simple. I mean, that thing is terrible. I mean, the problem is, I know it's bad, and when I come up to it, I'm gonna go right down to a crawl. The guy behind me don't know it's bad. He could care less. And if he's somebody that's on this thumb machine, he could care less. And I'm gonna get rear-ended. I'm telling you, I've almost got rear-ended about 5 times. It's ridiculous. But, you know, how do you get them to fix it? That's the problem. But if everybody starts screaming, you put in a call, because you got cars going over, and we keep hammering on them, somebody's gotta listen somewhere, you know, even if it's, I don't know who, you know. But as a community, we gotta work together. The problem is, how do we get these damn voters out to vote, you know?
I wish I had that answer.
I mean, it's sickening. 10%?
They did see a big increase this year in absentee voters. So there's more, now whether that means there's gonna be less people at the polls or more people have decided to vote, I guess we'll see when it's all done, but they have seen a huge increase in absentee voter ballots.
So we're all getting old, we don't have to go down anymore.
Well, and you're right. The community is getting older, and we're gonna vote, get an absentee ballot. I mean, it's that simple. If we can do it, you know, I mean, but the problem is, if you got 80% sitting under Duff doing nothing, that's sad.
Was the voter turnout 10%, is that what you're saying?
last few
Or
elections,
20%.
it's been right around 10%.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
I don't know.
mean, we're lucky if we can get 10%. We're letting 10% make our decisions for the entire thing.
And of the 10%, 90% are uninformed or ill-informed.
Well, you're right, but how do we inform them? How do we get their attention to get them to the voting booth?
Well, this year, we're going to try door-to-door to see if that helps. We're going to put in the hours, to see if we can talk to some people.
How many are registered?
We have a lot of
They're not
registered
registered,
voters.
you're wasting your time.
Right, but we have that list that
Oh,
shows,
you do?
yeah.
Wilson isn't registered.
So we won't be wasting our time. We'll be able to get to the registered voters to say, please get out and vote.
Where do you vote, Bill? We voted Assumption. But I mean, there's always a lineup there. There's a lot of
You-
people at Assumption Church.
You typically have a very good turnout at that precinct.
But I mean,
Yeah, but we're still winding up with 10%.
Yes.
we gotta be 8 of it. We gotta be 8% out of one precinct. Because there's a lineup there when we go to vote.
Sure.
But what does that say?
Where's the city of Bridgeport? Where's Southfield? Where's all them people? Williamson? They must not, where do they vote?
Williamson, St. Christopher's.
Yes.
Their turnout.
Yeah, I live out this way. I vote at Community Church. And then there's there's St. Christopher's, Community Church, Township, and then Assumption. But there's 5, but I'm missing one from
I
somewhere.
thought 2 precincts with 1.
Yeah, 3 and 4 vote at St. Christopher.
Yes, that's right. They combined 2 precincts.
And that's gonna happen again because Assumption, this will be the last time they'll be voting at Assumption, is gonna be closed in mothball. So there'll be no more voting at Assumption after this election. This election, you will vote there. Next election, you will not. It was up to the people that run Assumption, this election would have been.
So they have to move it to maybe Sheridan Road Baptist Church or something. Otherwise, everybody's going to have to drive to this side of the river.
Yeah, that may be the case. I noticed in a lot of the elections recently that you've seen a lot more politicians sitting out at the polls with their information. As long as you're 400 feet away from the polls, you're okay to do that kind of thing. Yes,
From the actual spot where you vote.
yes, 400 foot from the actual voting booths. So, you know, that may be an option for us if we can get enough people to get the information out, the last ditch effort to say, come talk to us, you know, here we are, that might be worthwhile.
The police department's never gone door to door in the past elections. This year, we're joining.
Oh, when a police officer knocks on your door, you know that? So you got a fireman and a policeman knocking on your door. Oh, I'm on it.
Well, actually, we will. We cannot wear, when we do this, we cannot wear anything that was paid for out of the general fund. Well, and the reason for that is, he may not mind, Jack may say, yeah, okay, great, I'm for it. You may be dead set against, say, well, wait a second. I paid for these guys to go out and,
Knock on my door.
so, unless we wear a t-shirt or a sweatshirt that we paid for out of our pocket, so we won't be in uniform. Is that silly or not? Is that silly or what?
I seen Purcell on TV doing it, knocking on doors.
Yeah, t-shirts on here. We bought these ourselves, so
And we have clothing in
Can
the
I see the
box.
receipt?
I got it somewhere around here.
There's probably a couple of people that'll ask for that.
I'll get together and go get an accusation.
Yeah, as long as your sign don't say we're in favor, the news won't come out.
We've been accused of taking the pancake money or the spaghetti money and buying the signs and the flyers and stuff like that. And that's what Chief was making the point, that all that money, the money that we make tomorrow night, for example, won't go anywhere near money that we've opted to spend on these flyers or signs. That'll go towards your trailer or any other tool that we need, probably books and the like.
Our money's come from the police. For that, so general fund money.
Word of mouth is huge too, just telling your friends and neighbors and
And the rule for that is if we're asking you to vote yes, then that's when the line gets drawn like this. This isn't asking you to vote yes, it's just providing information. So I was able to run those off the printer at the fire station today. But if I were asking you to vote yes, no tax dollars can be spent on anything, and ask you to vote yes, and that's what we do, we go door to door, so.
Proposal 1 and 2, you gotta vote yes on too. We're asking everybody. That's for hunting and conservation.
Okay?
We don't want the Humane Society making the laws.
No.
No.
But it's worded, if you watch it, you read it, a lot of people are gonna be voting no on it, because that's how they think it, that's the way it's worded.
Okay. So you guys have to do some education on that, huh?
Yeah, you gotta vote yes. Well, that's, unless you love, tree hunters, But they gotta word it for, there's be a lot of people make mistakes because of it.
And that's the bad thing about these ballot languages too, is the way they have to be.
They have to word it.
They almost make you word it confusing.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important that we wanted the ballot language on here so you can read it and understand exactly what it is.
I think if the people see this, more people see this, it usually have a hell of a turnout.
Hoping.
Our biggest issue is.
You're gonna walk door to door and hand them out.
Or hope they don't never need us. So it's kinda like paying your insurance, man, I pay insurance every month. You may never claim it, it keeps going up. We're kind of the same thing. We keep looking at this money that, well, I'm not gonna have a fire and stuff. Sure enough, when they do, we don't get there fast enough, get the fire out fast enough. And they, really did. But now, so we kinda deal with
You
that.
guys showed up and I had a fire, I might have to listen to
And
that.
stuff. We don't control the prices of stuff. The cheapest said, our last fire engine, there's no fancy fire engines they can go, because they can go $500,000 for a fire engine, trust me. But the cost of a basic fire engine just keeps climbing because of all these standards and changes. Equipment to turn out here, we had an open house a little over a week ago, and people were amazed. The fact that it costs between $8,000 to $10,000 for a single firefighter to be able to walk into a burning building. That's how much for everything from head to toe that we wear for one firefighter.
Yes.
It's $8,000 to $10,000. People are amazed by that number.
But it's gonna keep you alive too.
The coats and
Absolutely.
pants, 1,800, boots are 250, helmets, $300, gloves, $45, $50 for the pair of gloves, the air pack now are
The only
almost $5,000, so.
would be pistol, duty rig, belt, vest, band, yep, and a set of uniform, which is 3 pants, 3 long sleeve shirts, and 3 short sleeve shirts. That's the only equipment that goes for the officers. So everything we have right now is good for the 5 years. We wouldn't have to buy any more patrol vehicles. While we're on that topic of patrol vehicles, the reason we have Tahoes is because they last so much longer. I can talk about the tracks, things like that. Chevy Impalas, the cars, they don't hold up for having to patrol the entire township. That's why we went to Tahoes. I can take a Tahoe and equip it, getting it, brand new, straight from the factory, putting everything in it that I need to for about $35,000. And now that I have my 4 Tahoes, that equipment is interchangeable now. Now I don't have to buy, new equipment unless something breaks, burns out, something like that. But they can go from one Tahoe to another Tahoe, things like that. So I've heard rumors that the Tahoes are some crazy price, but it's $35,000 to take us a Tahoe and put all the equipment in it that I need to make it patrol ready. And the maintenance cost on it, it's the cheapest run vehicle long term compared to an Impala, a car like that. It holds up. It's a truck frame that holds up so much better.
I'm glad you're gonna have a Humvee this winter, because this way we won't have to go and pull those things out for you.
That too, yeah. Our patrol Tahoes are all 2-wheel drive.
They got stuck a lot last year,
Yeah.
it was bad, bad ambulances get stuck.
Yeah, they're not 4-wheel drive, they're police pursuit rated, which means they're 2-wheel drive. Now Chevy is coming out this year with a 2015 all-wheel drive Tahoe. We're good at least, knock on wood, we should be good at least until 2016 before we have to think about replacing a Tahoe. So,
What's the insurance like on the Sundays and stuff that you're getting?
the beautiful thing about the Humvees, the only insurance I have to get on is liability. If I crack up a Humvee, I give it back to the defense, I go get another one. I don't have to replace it or anything. The Humvees, the only requirement that it has with Humvees, and then if we get any firearms from the military, I have to hang on to them forever or turn them back into the Department of Defense. So yeah, if I crack one up, the engine dies in it, it just fails, it's just dead, I send it back, that's it, I don't have to repair it. So that's why I only have to carry liability insurance. And I want to say, and this is an estimate, it's around $300 a year, I think, something like that, just for liability insurance.
We pay, for full coverage on ours, we pay, I think last year was $736 for full coverage. Of course, we have a pump. Pardon me?
For each vehicle?
No, for the Humvee we have in the fire department for our brush vehicle. But it's got a pump on it, it's got a water tank, it's a it's a little heavier. But yeah, for full coverage, it was like $736, I think, last year. That's replacement value, so if something were to happen to it, they would buy us a new brush truck. It would not be another Humvee. They're great in the winter, they're great for times that we've had to go in and pull a hunter out of the woods or something, but wow. Bad day of weather. On our side, they're very expensive because of all the firefighting equipment. They get them, they're half the weight.
Yeah. And then we strip them out further.
Yeah.
There's racks, things like that in there that we don't need, we take those out.
So ours has 200 gallons of water at 8 pounds a gallon.
8.62.
Yeah.
Our other weight goes 11,000 pounds.
Yeah.
I think theirs weighs half that.
I wasn't a pipe fitter for 42 years for nothing. That's one thing I do remember.
Really appreciate all of you coming out. Good discussion, great questions. Thank you very, very much.
If any other questions pop up, or you're talking to your friends, neighbors, they have any other questions, again, don't hesitate to give us a call, send us an email, give us a call. We'll find the answer for you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.